Hello and welcome back. In this video, we're going to explore our development workspace with Nitrous. So once you go to nitrous.io and then sign in, it's going to bring you to this page. And when we created our account, we had created this Ruby on Rails container. So to open the integrated development environment, simply click on this Open IDE button. Okay. So over here, you have your file tree on the top left. At the bottom here, you have your terminal window where you can issue commands. And over here, you have your text editor. Now, there's a README file right here, which is displayed when you log in. Now, this README file you can also find at any time when you click on Help and then this View README. It'll pull up this file. This has some information about your Nitrous environment. It talks about Ruby versions using rbenv, which we'll talk about soon. And here it says that your environment already comes with a Rails application. All right. So under code over here, this example is an example Rails application that the Nitrous team created for you. And this is how they did it. It shows the commands and basically what database they used, etc., etc. We'll explore all of this later on. At this point, if you want, you can read through this, how to preview application, but we'll look at all of this very soon. But this basically gives you some info on your account. Now, one thing I would like to show you at this time, if I actually pull up a file, let's say any file over here, this is the editor theme that came default, right? So if I click on Window and then Editor Theme, I can choose what theme to use. Right here, Vibrant Ink, I like this one. So I'm just going to stick to this one, but I'd encourage you to basically look at these and play around with it. But basically just look around the environment and get yourself familiar with it. Okay, so I'm gonna close this and then I'm gonna close that. And then right here. Okay, now first I want to go down here to the terminal and see what version of Rails is installed. Okay, to do that, I'll type in Rails space -v. Okay, I see that it's Rails version 4.2.0. Okay, now I want to see what version of Ruby is installed. To check that, type in Ruby space -v and hit enter. I see that it's Ruby 2.1.5. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is the Ruby version manager. And our development environment comes pre-installed with rbenv. Okay, so to pull up the link, click on Help, View README, and then if you scroll down here, rbenv README. Okay, so why do we need a version manager? Well, different applications you work on may come with different versions of Ruby due to when they were started or due to programmer preferences or a multitude of reasons. So you need a version manager to switch between multiple versions of Ruby. So you can use the version manager to set your default Ruby version, or you can set project-specific versions. Okay, so now let's go back to our IDE and explore some basic usage of rbenv. Okay, I'll clear this up a little bit. Okay, so to see all the Ruby versions that are available to us, type in rbenv versions and hit enter. Okay, so we see that we have two versions, Ruby 2.1.5, which is the global default version, and we also have Ruby 2.2.1. Okay, now what if I want to set Ruby 2.2.1 as my default? To do that, type in rbenv space global space 2.2.1. Okay, now that sets 2.2.1 as my global version of Ruby. How do I test that? Type in Ruby space -v and hit enter. You see now my Ruby version is 2.2.1. Okay, so now if I want to see the versions of Ruby that I have available, I'll notice that 2.2.1 will have an asterisk next to it. which will basically say that that's the default global version. So let me do that. rbenv space versions and hit return. Notice how 2.2.1 has the asterisk next to it. Okay. Now, if I want to switch back to 2.1.5 as my global, I can type in rbenv global 2.1.5 and hit return. Now Ruby space -v. I see that it's 2.1.5. rbenv versions. Notice how 2.1.5 has the asterisk. Okay. Now, this is your global setting of Ruby. What if you want to set your Ruby version for a specific directory or a Rails application? Okay. To do that, you'd use rbenv local instead of global, and then enter in the version number. So 2.2.1 or something like that. Okay. Now that will set it only for that application and not your global Ruby version. Okay. So now I'll cover some very basic terminal commands that we're going to use that we need to understand. First, type in pwd. This stands for print working directory, and that'll basically show you which directory you're in at any point. Okay. Now, so you see you're in home nitrous. Now, if you look over here, this is the directory that we're currently in, nitrous. So if I type in ls, which stands for list, it should show me code as the directory that's available, okay, based on what we can see here. So let's do that. Type in ls and hit enter. You see that it's code. All right, that is this directory right here. Now within code, I have example, which is the Rails application that came default with my nitrous account. So to navigate into this directory, code, I can type in cd, which stands for change directory, and then code, and hit return. Now notice how the directory showing is code. Okay, now if I type in ls, it'll give me example, okay, which is my Rails application. Hit enter, see example. So what is inside example is my Rails application. So if I navigate into example and then type in ls, notice how all the files and the directories that are listed here as well. All right. So now I'm going to clear this up a little bit. Okay. Now, a couple of things that we need to cover at this point is also making and deleting directories and files. Okay. So I'm going to exit out of example. To exit out and move up one directory, you can type in cd space ... All right. So now we're back in code. So we're back in this directory over here. To create a directory, let's say we want to create a directory for Ruby projects. To do that, type in mkdir and then Ruby_projects. So mkdir is make directory space, then the folder name. Okay, and then hit enter. Notice how I have a directory here that's called Ruby projects now. Okay. Now, what if I want to delete this directory, Ruby projects? How do I do that? You type in rmdir Ruby_projects. Notice how it's gone now. Okay, perfect. However, this rmdir will only work if this Ruby projects directory is empty. What if it's not empty? Okay, so let me do that again. mkdir Ruby projects. So over here, if I right click here and create a new file, and we'll just call it test.rb. Now, if I open test.rb, hello, and that's it. And then I'll hit Command S to save it. Now, if I type in ls down here, the terminal window, notice how I have Ruby projects. Now, if I type in rmdir Ruby projects, which is no longer empty because it has this file test.rb within it, right? So if I hit enter, notice how failed to remove Ruby projects directory is not empty. All right. Now in this situation, what if I want to still remove Ruby projects? To do that, even though there's a file inside it, I still want to delete Ruby projects. So to do that, I'll type in rm space -rf Ruby_projects. Okay, this will force remove Ruby projects, even if there's contents within it, and hit return. There you go, Ruby project is gone, okay? This file doesn't exist anymore. All right, so that's what I wanted to cover in terms of basic terminal commands. So I'll clear this up a little bit. So now I want to run the Rails server and make sure that it's running and working as I want, okay? So how do I run the Rails server? I can either create a new Rails application, or I can test out the existing application that this development environment came with, which is example, right? Now to run the Rails server, I have to first go into my Rails application. So I'll go to example, okay? Once you're within the application, type in Rails space server, or you can just type in Rails s -b 0.0.0.0. Okay, so the command is Rails space s space -b space 0.0.0.0 and hit return. Okay, we see that the server is running. Now to preview the application, scroll over here to preview, click on it, and then port 3000, which is default. Okay, click on that. There you go. It pulls up a new browser window and it shows the application is running. Okay, now over here, click on about your application's environment and you can see the Rails version. You can see the Ruby version. Now, if you scroll down, you'll see the database is Postgres, right? This is slightly different from a default Rails application, right? If you just ran Rails new and name of the application, it would create a default Rails application that would have SQLite as the database. But over here, Nitrous had created this Rails application for us using this command that said Rails new example space -d space Postgres SQL, which basically is specifying that use Postgres as the database instead of the default SQLite. And you can check that out if you go to config and then database.yaml. You'll see here that the adapter is Postgres and it has some information on the database. Okay, so I'll close that. Okay, perfect. Now if I want to shut down the server, I'll have to click Control C and that shuts down the server. Okay, now if I go back here and then try to reload this page, it's not going to work because the server is no longer running. All right. All right, perfect. I hope you're now a little more familiar with your IDE. I'd encourage you to play around with the different editor themes, look at the Rails application that's there, then, see how they use Postgres, and then read through this about me a little more. Now, as your homework assignment, I want you to get more comfortable issuing commands in the command line. Okay? Now, to do that, if you pull up a browser window, go to Google, type in learn code the hard way, and then command line. And this is the first link that shows up, command line, learn code the hard way. Click on it, and then just go through this, okay? It shows you how to go through a lot of commands. We're not gonna be using most of it, but this is, as a programmer, this is very important and very good to know. All right, so with that, we wrap up section 1 of this course. Good luck on the homework assignment. I hope you are able to get some good, useful information from this. And in the next section, we'll talk about Ruby, which is the underlying programming language used in Rails. We'll get used to coding in Ruby and go through some syntax and programming exercises. Okay, great. Congratulations on setup of your Rails development environment. We have a few alternative IDE sign-up and familiarization videos and preview videos of the apps we'll build in this course after this. So enjoy, and I'll see you in the next section.